All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Confido Legal Friday Legal Case Management Jam session. I'm super excited today to get to be chatting with Lea Wold. She's the CEO and founder of Checkmark Projects. She has over 15 years of operations experience as a chief of staff, chief operating officer, and as the founder and CEO of Checkmark Projects, has helped many law firms set up their different technology solutions, from case management systems to CRM, time and billing. And so she's an expert in the field. And today, very excited that we're going to be chatting a little bit about how to prepare for a demo. There's many resources out there to tell sales reps how to prepare for a demo, but from the law firm's perspective, when you're booking a demo, how do you prepare for that demo? What kind of things, should you invest in prior to it? How should you interact with the sales rep? What should you expect from follow-up? So it's kind of a reverse of what most of the advice out there. And so very excited to have the conversation. I'll let Lea say a few words to introduce herself, and then we'll dive into the conversation from there.
Yeah, I'm super glad to be here, Emery. Thanks for inviting me. You're like, it's wild to me that this is a topic that isn't super talked about, right? And when you and I were chatting about this appearance, I was like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely a conversation that we should be having, right? Because when I work with my clients, this is one of the things that I do for them a lot, is the research and the prep, because it becomes overwhelming really fast. And attorneys generally are pretty good at their own research, but when it comes time to make a decision, you can kind of get that like analysis paralysis thing happening. And that's one of the things that I help my clients with, is helping them narrow down their choices and really get super clear about what their priorities are and what they need to get out of this, and what's the motivation for even starting down this path in the first place. Because it becomes clear that you need to do something when things start to kind of go awry. But is this a symptom of you need to change your actual software? Or is this a symptom of there's disorganization within the firm, right? And a lot of times it's both, but it's getting really clear on what are our motivations, what do we want to get out of this, and what does it look like on the other side, right? And just, it's a process. And a lot of people who work in professional services firms, particularly law firms, this isn't their skill set, right? You only do this in a business a few times, probably. So working with someone who does it all the time is going to be able to help you sort of separate the wheat from the chaff. And that's really a lot of what we do at Checkmark Projects, is help our clients get that kind of clarity. And then also, take it off their plate, because the last thing any attorney really wants is to be bogged down with the thing that's not going to make them any money, right? Like, you want to be focused on the profitable business that is running a law firm, not so much the administration. And doing this becomes an investment in the business itself, but also what's possible for the future of the business.
Yeah. So kind of what I'm hearing is there's a fair bit at stake in this process of deciding on software. You can make some huge leaps if you get it right. You can also spend a lot of time, resources, money if you get it wrong.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. That's such a great point. If you make the wrong choice and you're doing more things manually than you need to, you're going to end up making hires that maybe you didn't have to. And then that costs the firm even more, overhead cost. One of the biggest factors to deciding on a platform is how much it costs. And I tend to like to approach it from a different perspective. And it's more, how much can it do to give my people more time to handle more cases, right? Which then you can delay adding in additional admin, additional paralegals, You could free up more time in your schedule, depending on the size of the firm and who's doing what. But if you can get a system that is going to help you reduce missed deadlines, reduce human error, and get more done in the day, what does it matter what it costs?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it matters, but like if it costs less than a whole human doing it, or it costs a client relationship, the subscription costs are minimal in comparison. And if you get it right, you can accelerate. And if you get it wrong, that's all the stuff that can go wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did a whole one of these conversations on basically that, because pricing is so well defined and so easy to quantify, and the benefits and downsides of selecting either the right or wrong system are so hard to quantify. Everybody focuses on price when the potential value outside of cost is so much bigger.
So much bigger. Yeah. I don't know if I've heard you guys, have you heard that talk that you're mentioning, but I would really, please send me the link for that after this, if you would. But yeah, the stakes are high. Like the firm is at stake with a correct or an incorrect choice. And really, like I say incorrect, it is kind of a grave thing to make a wrong choice, but it's also a recoverable thing.
Yeah.
Right? You can change your path. You don't have to stay stuck. It sounds super daunting to think about, oh my gosh, I have to pull all of my clients out of my existing system and put them into something new. And it's a little bit scary. It's, everybody's got their familiar routines and the things. So you'll probably get pushback if you have a team, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll probably experience some of that. But I also really advocate for getting a couple of people on your team into some of those demos so they can see what's possible, because you can also get buy-in from them. You can get people excited about what's possible to make their day better, make their day easier.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And having a couple of those champions on a team is going to make a huge difference in like steering the ship, right? And moving it in a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I want to dive into kind of your process, because I think it is pretty interesting that you've designed kind of a whole process around how to approach a demo from the law firm's perspective. This is not meant to be a kind of a presentation or an in-depth thing, so we can keep it pretty high level, but I'd love to just kind of go over what is your typical process? What do you do when you're coaching the law firm about software selection, and especially kind of how to approach a demo?
Yeah, great question. And you're right. I do have a relatively defined process that I go through. But from a high level, it's really get clear about what you want. Get clear about your pain points. Get clear about your priorities. And often I find law firms come to me and they're like, I got to do something, right? I have no control. I have no visibility into what's happening day to day, or I'm constantly having to follow up with my paralegal to make sure she's doing the things that I need to do, or I don't even know what they're doing. A lot of the people that I work with are remote practices, right? So they're not in an office sitting next to each other. So there is some amount of ambiguity as to what everybody's doing all the time. And if that's the pain point, great. Like we can identify that going in and find a tool that's going to help you get more visibility into what's happening in your practice, get more visibility into what is the workload that everybody's up against. And it becomes, you can gather black and white data really around how long things are taking, which you probably have some amount of anyway when you're looking at your billable, hours. You probably have some of that, but it can get more clear, and you can have some amount of capacity planning of who can handle how much work and how long does it take to turn these things around. So it's really about clarity. Get super clear on what you need and rank those things. That is probably one of my biggest tips, is rank the things that you want to accomplish in order of their importance to your firm, because you're not going to find a tool that's going to hit every single one of those that you want, right? You need to know your have to haves, your nice to haves, and I'm willing to compromise this thing. and yeah, it would be great if we can find that, but time and again, I find that's just not the case, right? So don't have unrealistic expectations going in.
Do you find that there's like, do firms discover things that they didn't know they needed? Because I think that's kind of like from the
Absolutely.
sales rep standpoint, they're hoping that, they'll be able to wow you with things that you didn't even know existed. Is that realistic, or do firms identify those things in the sales process?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that I do with my clients is I walk through, I'm like, what are you doing right now? What happens from the very first point of contact with a potential client? What happens? What do you do with them? Where do they go? Where do you store that information? Who's following up with them? How are you getting information out of that person? And we start to look for these repeatable processes. So also having that documented in some way, and we can do it together, you can do it on your own, and just knowing what that is, you'll discover holes that you didn't know were there, and there's tools to fill those holes that you didn't know were there, right? And unless you're actually being super intentional about outlining those things and searching for the solution to those things, you could end up just leaving a lot of money on the table from a firm perspective. So there definitely is. And I find it's so funny. I think I've said this to you before in one of our previous conversations that we've had, is like, law for any industry that has a regulating body is pretty slow to adopt a new technology, right? Because of all of the concerns around the security of it and the longevity of it and the approval of the regulating body, all of that. So I've encountered firms, and please don't feel bad about this if you are that firm, but there are firms who are like, wait a minute, I can completely automate client intake and have them fill out a digital form, and that can go directly into my case management system. And then I can populate a document with that information that the client entered, and my team doesn't have to do any data entry. Like it's like you kind of see like the fireworks go off, and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that was a thing. And, of course, a lot of firms know that now, but I do still encounter those folks, and they didn't know that was the thing. They're just like, oh, I need to make my intake faster. It takes too long to get information out of the client. There's reminders that can go out. There's text messages that can go out that's like, hey, you have this thing that's not been completed yet, right? So there's a lot of possibilities that are out on the table that lawyers, I don't know, like people who are running firms, they're too busy to explore them. And that's kind of just what I do.
Yeah. So part of it's about kind of optimizing processes, but there might also be things in this process that you identify where maybe you can get a lot more efficient by changing your process, maybe even to adapt to the software as well.
So. Try to keep your brain somewhat flexible in this process. Try not to hold too rigid to the existing processes, because doing so can leave you missing an opportunity. And I mean, that's probably could be said of all humans in all kinds of different, avenues, but it's particularly true when you're looking at making such a big change for a firm, right? Like, we have to do this thing this very specific way. And my clients don't always like it, but I'm like, but do you have to do it that way? Or are you just used to doing it that way?
Yeah.
Right. And that's like, what are they, like the neuroplasticity of being able to change. And sometimes that's the bigger hurdle, right? Is everybody has their habits and their things. So don't discount that as part of this process.
Interesting. Man, you must have some real stories.
I mean, yeah, and that's from both sides. Like, that's with clients' experiences, but also experiences with the softwares themselves. Like, I joke sometimes with my clients that I'm the software salesperson's like worst nightmare, right? Like, I want to poke all the holes in their sales pitches. Like, I want to let's take the hood completely off and disassemble this thing, because I want to see how it actually runs. One of the things that I do regularly is ask a salesperson to get a software engineer on the call with us, because the salesperson knows what the salesperson has been told to know, right? they're not always technical experts. In fact, most of the time they're not. And so I want to talk to the person who actually knows what's under the hood. Like, tell me, is this piece connected to this piece? How is it working? Right? Is there a database that's supporting this, or is this just set information that you guys are providing? Like, can I control what's in that table of information? Yes or no? Because at the time, sometimes I do think my clients think I kind of get down rabbit holes. And honestly, I do too, because I do get down rabbit holes because I get kind of like dorky about it because I want to know. And I want to know like the bits and pieces. But it's a good way to tell if your salesperson, one, is giving you honest answers, right? But it's more, you're doing more than kicking the tires. It's like taking a used car to the mechanic before you buy it and asking them to take a look at it, right? Like you want somebody else who knows what they're talking about to tell you like, oh, this thing's going to blow up. Like it's not going to blow up. But you know what I mean? Like I think the analogy still kind of works.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Emery, like, have you, even with what you guys do, have you felt those like pain points of like, oh man, like we're trying to keep track of all of these people and where we're at with all of them. And, you know, over the course of the evolution of the business that you guys have you guys had to change softwares before? Has this been a problem like specifically for you that you guys have tackled?
We have changed some of our sort of ancillary software, but we run on HubSpot primarily. Sure. And this came up in the pricing discussion. You know, we spent a lot on HubSpot before we had any clients.
Right.
Because we knew that we wanted to and needed to get here.
Right.
You know, we wanted to grow to this size and beyond. And we couldn't do that without having the system.
Like just from a spreadsheet?
Yeah, exactly. It was not going to work. You know, we needed that no-code automation and things like that. So it just sat there collecting mothballs until we got our first client. And now we've been on it for 4 years.
Nice.
So luckily we haven't had to change internally.
Yeah, that's great. Like finding something that will grow with you is also a big consideration, like making sure that you look at where's the firm headed? Where do you want to go? And how long is this particular product that I'm considering going to be viable given those goals? Right? Like none of us have a crystal ball. We won't be able to totally accurately predict that. But, you know, given your trajectory, given the initiatives that you're putting in place, will you outgrow it very quickly or not?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's so important to nail that.
Yeah. And identifying. So back to like the process stuff. So it's really getting clear. Then it's doing your research, right? Like what's out in the market, asking your colleagues, asking your friends, looking at one place that I recommend a lot is like some Facebook, like attorney groups, right? There's a lot of them. You can join one of those if you don't already belong to one or somewhere else, right? There's Reddit, there's plenty of resources where you can just go in and read what actual people who are using these different platforms have to say and ask them about it. So, and then also don't overwhelm yourself. Like pick 3, start with 3, do those demos. That's it. Like if you end up with a list of like, start with the list of 15, do your research on all of them, but then pick 3 to demo, your top 3. You can always come back to the list of 15 if you want, but don't give yourself too many options because you'll end up in that analysis paralysis, right? So you got to get clear on what you want. You got to get clear on what it's going to do for you, what is in the market that actually can be those solutions for you. And I always recommend getting a one-on-one demo wherever possible, whether you're doing industry specific software like legal case management, that's what it is, or you're trying to make a generic tool like an Asana or a Airtable or whatnot work for you. The generic ones, I have noticed this trend. I don't know if you've noticed this. They're much more reluctant to give you a demo, right? Because they're serving so many people and so many industries. And then those salespeople don't always have a lot of knowledge about how you would build it for that particular industry.
I've seen that.
Yeah. And I think it's getting more and more common, right? Where they're doing live demos, which might actually be a recorded one. Who knows? Like it's just evergreen content that they're having people be able to attend live. There's lots and lots of YouTube videos about basically every platform. I try to look for the ones that aren't put out by the platform themselves, because that tends to be not necessarily, you don't get to look at both sides, right? Like it's pretty heavily biased in the favor of the software that it's promoting, that it's being put out by. There's still good content as far as like the how-tos and the tutorials and things like that, like how to do it. But as far as like the sizzle reel sort of thing, they're pretty biased. But one thing, I think I've told you this, Emery, and this is totally like my own little sort of like backdoor secret that I do, is I will find people who are on the sales teams on LinkedIn and reach out to them on LinkedIn and be like, hey, I'm kind of interested in this software, and just see, like, especially if it's one that doesn't really do a lot of demos, because a lot of people aren't reaching out to them that way. So maybe I shouldn't say that, because I don't want everybody doing that, because that'll be right. Then they'll turn that off. They won't be able to do it. But that is a way to get a little bit more information from the platform, where that you might not get just from their website or from their YouTube videos and, you know, the stuff that's there, the live demo, the pre-recorded demo things. So attending those, getting your team on board, and getting super clear about what that's going to look like. And it really does help to like map out what that changeover looks like, right? Like, we think it's going to take this much time. You're going to use your best guess, but map out all of the pieces that have to move, right? And set a date to change over, because, you know, the human brain typically likes to organize kind of around deadlines, right? And yeah, maybe you might have to push it out a little bit, but if you've got people on your team that are at least anything a little bit like me, like, I can't stand to miss a deadline. Like, it literally, it's like an itch I can't scratch, right? Like, if it's coming up, like, I have to do it. I have to meet it. Like, I hardly help myself from that. And it might not be you as the attorney who's running the firm. It might be your admin or somebody like that, but that person's going to be a really good ally and advocate for this change if you rope them in.
Yeah, I love it. I do want to back up just a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's focus on the actual, the demo. You know, let's say, okay, you've done the research that you're talking about. You've narrowed it down to 3. You booked a demo. What should a firm be thinking about as they're getting ready to go into that demo? And then how should they get the most out of that demo?
Good question. Very good question. So usually when you go into a demo, the salesperson has a pitch. They have their agenda, right? Like, they know it, they've practiced it, whatnot. I kind of like to just interrupt that and be like, this is my time. I want to accomplish these things. And some of them, you know, they'll ask you that, but having a list of questions identified ahead of time that you want to actually get addressed in that call, don't be afraid to interrupt the salesperson, right? Like, they're there to make you happy, not the other. You don't have to make them happy, right? Like, obviously be a nice person and don't be a jerk about it. But like, I mean, sometimes you have to, I will say, but that does happen. But be firm, be diplomatic, but ask for what you need. And if the conversation isn't going in the direction that you want it to go in and you're not getting much out of it, redirect the conversation. Also, don't be afraid to ask for a different salesperson if you're not vibing with that person. Like, it's okay, right? Like, ultimately, you're trying to be a customer of the company, not a customer of that salesperson. And after you've purchased, you don't have to see that person again. I don't think I have ever had a salesperson reach back out to me and be like, hey, how's your subscription going? Like, a year later. Like, the first 6 months, maybe, because they want to retain you, but it's typically not a face-to-face conversation. You don't have to look them in the eye again, you know. But me, I do, because I make relationships at these different platforms, and I've found some people at certain ones that I like to have a rapport with and they understand how I operate. But as a law firm, how many times you guys haven't moved from HubSpot? How long? When was the last time you talked to your HubSpot salesperson?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Right. So, like, get what you want out of it. Make sure that your agenda is addressed, not theirs.
Love it.
And have one when you show up. If you show up cold, you're going to let them lead the conversation, and you're going to let them sell you, when in reality, you need to make sure that your needs are getting met, that your firm's needs are getting met.
Yeah. So speaking to kind of like the busy managing partner who's getting ready to go into this demo, the value that they get out of it is really getting to lead the agenda and make a good decision, as opposed to being influenced
Yes.
by how well the software is presented by the sales rep. So
yep. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Cool. Like it actually saves time in the long run, right? To do the prep work, because you know what you're looking for going in. And if you just, sit down at your desk and you've been doing a whole bunch of other things and you haven't done any prep work, you're going to end up setting yourself up for wasting time talking about things that actually don't matter to the firm.
Yeah. Or not getting to a decision.
Oh, just, not getting to a decision, not getting to see the things that you're actually there to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you got to know those things going in. That's what you actually want to see.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, we can hang out a little bit. We're kind of scheduled to end now, which we don't necessarily have to, but I do want to make a plug. So team dropped in the comments your kind of detailed process. We've hit the kind of the wave tops, but if anybody's out there is interested in kind of Lea's full demo prep software selection process, that's in the comments there. And I know she'd be happy to chat with you about it. Any questions you have.
Yeah. I mean, clearly this is a topic I could talk about kind of a lot, right? Like it's wild to me how important it is and how little attention it gets. Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. And I also love it when I'm with my clients and like I'm asking questions in the demos along with them and whatnot. And I've just recently, one of my more recent clients was like, oh my gosh, like you're really good at like sitting through these demos. And it was actually a light bulb moment for me of like, oh, I actually have developed this skill set to sort of like separate like the BS that the salespeople are saying versus what's the actual information that we need, and like just kind of cut through that. And it's taken me a lot of hours of doing demos poorly to be able to do a demo well and sit through and actually get the information that I want. So if you're not doing it all of the time, you don't have time to develop the skill set to do it. And why would you want to? Like that's not your thing. It is mine for whatever strange reason that my brain was created this way. It is funny to me that this is a thing I actually enjoy to do. And I think most of the attorneys that I meet are like, oh my goodness, thank the Lord that you exist, because I don't want to do this. This is painful. And I'm like, really? I just want to ask all the questions. I want to see everything. So, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, yeah, we're kind of getting to the end of the time. And to some degree, this is a little self-serving, for you. But speak to the small law firm that maybe thinks I'm too small to get help, in this area. Or obviously big companies have, if you're implementing Salesforce, there's a lot of companies out there that can help you implement Salesforce. But if you're a solo or a small law firm, speak to that person who thinks that they're not in a place where they can get help and they have to do it themselves.
How much is your time worth? How much are you charging an hour for your time to work with your clients? Like, are you willing to sacrifice that to do this? Like, oh my goodness. Like,
see pricing section.
What?
See pricing presentation.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's just it. Like, why, if this is not typically any person who's running a law firm's skill set, because their skill set is being an attorney, managing the people that are in the firm, especially for small firms that are trying to do it all. What do they say? Like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Is that what it is? I think that's something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. Like, right. Like, but
regardless, it works for this situation.
Yeah. But it's really like, utilize the tools that you have at your disposal and hire people that have different skill sets from you, because they're going to only make you look better, because they fill in the gaps, right? Mm-hmm. They fill in those places that you have knowledge gaps, and we all have them. I have zero clue how to actually be an attorney, right? I can build all the processes and do those things, but when it comes to actually being an attorney, like, no, thank you. Like, that's not a thing I want to do. So it works in reverse as well, right? Like, just because you're an attorney doesn't mean that you have to know how to do this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And don't put that pressure on yourself either. Like, it is actually, it can be more cost effective. It can be faster. You get better results when you're actually utilizing people to help you that have the skill set to do it. Like, if you want to, if it's a hobby of yours and you're interested in software and you're interested in the technology, go for it, right? But so many of us just don't have the time in the day. Like, we're all spent doing the business of having a life, right? Of running a business, of earning a living, of having people in our lives that we care about, that we want to spend time with. And if this takes away from any of those things and it's not your skill set and you don't enjoy it, why wouldn't you hire it out?
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
I'm very passionate about that, clearly.
That's a good way to wrap up. I'll give one plug. If you are just starting the process and starting to look for your short list, whether it be 15 or you're trying to narrow that 15 down to 3, we have some tools at confidolegal.com/LCM, where there's a database of legal case management systems. You can do kind of a quick worksheet to get some recommendations and tips and tricks like this video, which will be up there in the next couple of days. So I'll drop it in the comments, but it's confidolegal.com/LCM. I've also put Lea's process in there, so you can grab that as well if you're getting ready to go through this process. And just big thank you, Lea. It's always fun to chat.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now I'm feeling a little self-conscious about our demo process. I'm going to have to go back. Review it, or maybe maybe have
what, I would be happy to tell you the holes I would poke in it, right?
Perfect.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. But I will say that what you guys are doing, I very much enjoy, and the interface that you guys have and the like subscription billing and stuff is not something you find in a lot of places, right? In a lot of payment platforms. And that's, I feel like, the direction that the legal industry is heading, is a lot more flat fees, a lot more subscription type services as as technology improves and AI and all of those things that are out there. And it's going to end up being adapt or perish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We just did an episode. We just launched an episode with Kim Bennett of Fido.
Oh yeah. Yep.
It's a flat fee subscription legal services management platform.
Yeah. And you guys are fully integrated with them, right?
We integrate with them, and just what they're trying to do to change the way legal does billing is, we're definitely supporters of that.
So. Yep. Agreed. Like, let's get everybody the services they need, and also help lawyers not worry about the hours that it takes to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's the result we're after, not necessarily the amount of time spent to get the result.
Yep.
Totally.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll leave, especially the East Coast folks, with their weekend.
Yeah.
We have a few hours left, but thank you all, and thank you, Lea, and we'll definitely be back here shortly.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for having me.